My name is Ariella. I'm a medical student at Mount Sinai, and today I will be reading The Pop-Up Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother underneath the root of a big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mr. McGregor." Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. Do you see them picking blackberries? They're right over there. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. Do you see Peter sneaking away? There he is. He's not with his brothers and sisters picking blackberries. First, he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But around the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Do you see Mr. McGregor? There he is. Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. Oh no, Peter's lost. And look, he's trying to run away. He lost both his shoes and ran faster. Unfortunately, he ran into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons in his jacket. Peter gave himself up for lost. His sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who implored him to exert himself. Do you see the sparrows flying? Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve, which he intended to pop on top of Peter. But Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him. Do you see his jacket? Here it is. Peter rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. Do you see him hiding in the can? He's right there. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed. He began to turn over every flower pot, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. Kerchoo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time and tried to put his foot upon Peter. Do you see Mr. McGregor's foot? Look, it's there, and Peter's right there. Peter jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. Mr. McGregor was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Peter found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. Do you see Peter trying to get through the door? Do you think he's sad? Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently, he came to a pond. A white cat was staring at some goldfish, and she sat very, very still. But now and then, the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Do you see the cat sitting by the pond? Look, it's right over there. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. Suddenly, Peter heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scritch. Peter climbed upon a wheelbarrow. Right here, he's on the wheelbarrow. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions, and beyond him, it was the gate. Do you see the gate really, really far away? And Peter started running as fast as he could go. But Mr. McGregor caught sight of him, but Peter slipped underneath the gate into the wood outside the garden. Peter's getting away. Do you see him going under the gate? Peter never stopped running until he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down under the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I'm sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter, 1 tablespoonful to be given at bedtime. Do you see him in bed? And his mom is giving him some tea. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. The end.